Prabhu, what is an intentional approach Vraja Lila Prabhu practices in your marriage that energizes you?
Thank you for that question, Yadavna. An intentional approach. One in particular approach that Vraja Lila takes is she's intentionally learned my love language. Primarily, well, there's two primary, but one in particular is words of affirmation. And then also, I'd like to add, just also who she actually is. And that's kind of like an intentional approach also. In regards to my love language, words of affirmation, in the beginning of our relationship, I could see that that wasn't so much of a, it wasn't as easy for her to actually express words of affirmation. But as she received training and then observing my behavior, she began to give these words of affirmation. And I know after I received more training, I could see, her actually making this particular effort. And I would, in the beginning, I would appreciate the words that she was expressing, showing signs of her, yes, her appreciation also. And then as the years went by, I would not only appreciate the words, but I would appreciate the effort even more so than the words. Because the effort was a sign that she was actually trying to make a deeper connection with me. And that also inspired me to also express appreciation for her. And so by that means, she was an example in her words of affirmation. And then, just being who she actually is. And that relates to another love language, and that's acts of service. And who is she? She's just naturally a loving, caring, compassionate, generous person, devotee, with a tremendous taste for hearing. And that energizes me, just who she actually is. And so when, in regards to generosity, I know that sometimes used to bring up some contention in our relationship because, sometimes persons would refer to me as being a generous person, and I thought I was a generous person. But Vraja Lila takes generosity to a whole other level. And we would have debates. Well, yeah, okay, I want to give also, but do we really have to give that much? And she said, well, yes, let's give. Okay, let's give 108 instead of 51. It's like 108. You can do anything with $108. Give 251. Like 251. Do you know how much work I have to do to earn 251? And so even though we don't have so much, she would always give and give. And, sometimes give everything that we have. And there's something that she learned early in her devotional life from one of our inspirations, and that was Mother Ladini. And Mother Ladini used to express, the more you give, the more you get. The more you give, the more you get. The more you give, the more you get. And that was her mantra. And Vraja Lila took that mantra to heart and practices it in her daily life. Another thing that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj inspired her, that not only should you give, but give that which you appreciate the most. So if you have a sari and you appreciate it, give it. I haven't gotten there yet, but she actually practices this, and that energizes me and inspires me. And so those areas of generosity, and not only is she generous in giving gifts and Lakshmi, but she's generous even more so in giving her time and energy. And that's something that she's done throughout her entire devotional life. we traveled throughout the entire world, and I've expressed this many times. And no matter where we are, and this is something that's taken place for many years. No matter where we are, we always come in contact with at least one devotee that express how much they appreciate how she has assisted them in their spiritual life. And like I said, no matter where we go, and this is something that energizes me, the mood that she has as a selfless servant and service to others. And this reminds and uplifts me, encourages me, and inspires me. And as I said, reminds me that, we are actually servants of the servant, and our lives are based upon service to others and for the pleasure of Guru and Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. And so this is how she energizes in some of the areas.
Thank you so much for that. So it's really useful to see not only how she does things for you that make you feel energized, but just who she is. These are not things that she's doing for you in particular, but you get energy from that appreciation for who she is. That's a really important thing to know, right? Because that's not contingent on her performing something for you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That's really beautiful. And I appreciate, I'm sorry, go ahead. I appreciate also you're talking about those different love languages, because I can relate to that too. We also have different ways of, what is appreciation for one person is not necessarily appreciation for another person, or things along those lines. Thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so similarly, there are things that Akanta Bhakti does, which are like amazing like that, like you're describing with Vraja Lila. And so you walk this line much better than I, because how do you avoid the envy, jealousy route and go immediately for the, wow, that's wonderful, I'm inspired and energized by that? I could very easily go like, why you and not me?
Yeah.
Know what I mean?
He doesn't.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you find a punching bag, and then you use the punching bag frequently. No, that's something that became apparent in our relationship very early on. The enviousness, the jealousy, where I actually, could see that. Because Vraja Lila came to devotional service many years before I did. And she had relationships, more relationships in the devotional arena. And so in the very beginning, there was like a competition. And as a matter of fact, Partha Prabhu talked about that briefly, how there could be some, tug of war in the relationship. And so at some point in time, I had to make a decision on whether or not we wanted to assume a certain role of a typical husband, or play to the strengths in our relationship. And so we made this effort to actually play to the strengths in our relationship. And so it wasn't without a lot of effort, a lot of guidance with my spiritual master and God brothers and God sisters like Jagannath Pandit Prabhu and Chintamani and other devotees, in which I would have to go to and express my agony of going through this, struggle with my false ego. But gradually, understanding that by supporting her in her service to Guru and Gauranga, this is a group effort that we are actually making by supporting her in the endeavors that she was engaged in. Especially in this particular situation in our institution, there weren't so many females that were doing the types of services that she was doing in our organization. And so that was a kind of like almost like a unique position that she had. And so it was continued It was something that just made a tremendous effort. And again, like I said, I got a lot of help from devotees. I remember one particular devotee in Vrindavan. We were at Govardhan, his Grace Burjan Prabhu. And he said, how do you deal with such a powerful spouse, powerful woman? And I said, I had my own answer, but then I said, well, anything that I say wouldn't be as profound as whatever he could, enlighten me with. And I said, well, Burjan Prabhu, what would you suggest? And he said, be the servant of the servant. And then, he kind of chuckled. He said, and I see that you're trying. So, thank you.
It's beautiful.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I remember Yadanath and I take turns being jealous of each other. That's, how we get energy.
That's our balance, I guess.
That's our balance. No, I remember early on being very upset. We were talking about something and my looking at him and saying, but I was always the good one, trying to give that up. But thank you so much for your words.